And so all of that is fine, but we should also be careful about dismantling some of the big production apparatus. In particular, a lot of folks are talking about the military industrial complex being a type of business that is encroaching in our civil society and liberties. Um, and again, it goes into that same paradigm. What makes you stronger can sometimes kill you.
Yeah.
Making weapons makes you stronger, but then obviously it can sometimes kill you. But I think that the maturity of that conversation needs to occur because I don't think it is currently obvious. And the point I'm trying to make is when you say that we spend whatever it is now, 50 times more than the next 20 countries combined, or I don't think that's what it is. If I remember correctly, I think we spend 4 times more than the next 20 countries combined. First, the reason we do that is because the way our production is set up, not only in weapons, but in everything. Every product we make has a lot of overhead or a lot of cost associated with it, meaning in US, you don't have the same insurance policies as if you have, as the way they have them in China or in other countries.
Yeah.
If there's anything that is obvious today is that even though we spend a lot more, we don't have necessarily an overwhelming supremacy in terms of fighting power. And countries like Russia and China are also spending not as much as we do in nominal value, but in the end, the effort that they put on their society to make weapons is comparable to the United States. And the problem is when you say, let's cut the budget, the spending on weapons, you can't make that decision alone, because then you're going to reduce the effort that you put in making weapons while the others don't reduce their effort. So then you got to be careful you're not exposing yourself to a situation where you're no longer a combative force.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier, and I was making the point that every now and then you hear that China has Generation 5 fighter jets, and well, those don't fall out of the sky, pun intended.
Yeah.
They come from a military industrial complex that China has.
We don't even know China's really that well.
Right.
Russia, at least, we understand, like,
Sukhoi aircrafts are kick-ass fighter jets. You can't deny. Nobody can deny that. They have the Tupolev aircrafts that are the big carrier bombers type of. The MiGs are also produced, and so they have a military industrial complex as well. So when we say when people are upset, understandably so, like absolutely the entire world should ideally reduce their potential to produce weapons. They should focus more, just like I believe it was President Eisenhower or that was saying that every time you build a bomber, you don't build a school or a hospital or something. There's
an opportunity cost.
There's a cost every time you make a bomb. The effort to make a bomb is the effort to make an entire school or the cost of making the weapons takes funding and takes resources, including manpower, from building things that are helpful to the human society. You don't build, you take away from building bridges, fixing roads, buying modern laboratory equipment for schools, high schools. So we're not saying don't tackle this problem of building weapons. We're just saying also figure out where the reciprocal is, where the wall is. You can't just, let's just get rid of everything. Because then, if you get rid of everything, in the history of mankind, by the way, there have been societies that have focused more on what's useful to them in peacetime. And they've also been societies where there have been societies where they focused on keeping a small local government so they don't get oppressed by their government. Mm-hmm. And those societies have been eliminated. They've been burned to the ground by other societies that have kept a big government oriented towards war. Mm-hmm. And they've been obliterated. Famously, if you want, you can look at the Novgorod Republic, where they had free public education for everybody. Mm-hmm. There were no homeless, none of that, because it was also freezing cold.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Okay. And what happened to them?
Most of the country was
Ivan the Terrible, the strict. Ivan, he's known Ivan the Terrible. Ivan invaded them and burned the city to the ground.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful, because especially now, if you look at the gentleman that had an interview with Tucker Carlson recently, a Russian diplomat or advisor to Vladimir Putin, he said that Russia now, the Russian people are slowly recognizing the fact that they are not a European people, but they are an Asian people with European roots, and they are a warrior people. He stated that, and he's an advisor to Vladimir Putin. Karganov or some, I don't remember exactly his name. I believe Karganov. Yeah. And he's not the last or the latest episode of Tucker Carlson, but maybe second last or third last.
Right, but is that a fact that we have to acknowledge and accept?
What is it?
That, because I think the I think that's a maybe I'm naive, but I don't think we have to, because I think that guy's right. Historically, Russia has been an expansionist power. They've sought to dominate other ethnicities, other groups, other classes of people to their will, even under the Soviet Union, which was nominally, and it was more equal during the Soviet Union, but still not. It was still conducted itself.
You can't say that. I don't think it was.
You can argue because the Tsarist regime was so focused on the European identity, west of the Urals.
Right.
No, but for example, the Kazakhs suffered, the Armenians, the Georgia, all the Turkic populations in the steppes and Caucasus under the Tsarist regime had it pretty rough. Their religious minorities.
Yeah,
were
and then during that inequality was exported to Romanians, Estonians, Lithuanians, Latvians, and Polish people, and Czechoslovakia.
Absolutely. Well, that's my point.
So
it didn't conduct itself as a
inequality was not USSR was not
it was
an equal opportunity.
No, but for example, within the Soviet Union, Armenia enjoyed quite a bit better living conditions and quality of life than it ever did under the Tsarist regime or the Ottoman regime. Certainly under the Ottoman regime.
Maybe, but I'm not familiar
the glass
with the
ceiling
Armenians,
for
but you can't.
Yeah.
In the USSR times, the Ukrainians have suffered horribly. The Moldovans have suffered horribly. Czechoslovakia was invaded. So no.
Absolutely. But what I'm saying, my
I'm not sure about the Armenians. Maybe they did. Maybe they were lucky in that way. There were states, famously Bulgaria was hoping to join USSR.
They wanted to join the
They've made the application, and if the Soviet Union would have lasted a few more years, they would have been full members of the USSR.
But that's another that's another problem. And also I contest heavily the Soviet Union's adherence to traditional socialism and the values talked about by Karl Marx. But that's a different issue. My point is, I don't think that is an unalienable fact that certain groups of people are warriors or conquerors by blood.
No, but I'm not. I don't think that's.
I don't think that should be tolerated. In society.
But I don't think that you can. I don't think it's possible to police that. You can't. You can't. When any people, not just the Russians, when any people say we belong to this tribe and we are a warrior people, it's not nobody else's position to accept or deny that. All you can do is take that statement as a statement and understand the fundamental philosophy that those people are now driven by. You can take it as is. Hey, the Russians no longer feel that they are European.
I don't have any problem with them saying, I don't give a damn if they say they're European or if they say they're Mongolian. I don't.
Right.
That's whatever. It is not wrong to want to belong. However, anytime you say you are a warrior people, that implies a cultural mindset that is dangerous to the liberty and prosperity of every other group of people around you. So, yeah, you can't that's their choice, that's their sovereignty. Let's respect their sovereignty for them to identify as whatever they want. Yeah, but if your sovereignty and your right to be free starts to foster a culture that needs to prove how much of a warrior they are in the 20, I don't think that should be acceptable.
But this is the same as the hate speech. Whenever somebody makes that statement, yes, ideally, humanity should celebrate less its warrior side, because that just means violence and all the other stuff. However, the entity that would police that would be the biggest warrior, right? If you wanna, and so the only entity that would enforce the fact that it's not acceptable for people to state that they're warriors, that entity would be an even bigger warrior. So, and the truth is, the reason this Russian advisor made that statement, if you look at what's happening, is what made the Russians, because Russia up until 2014, they never said that they were a warrior people. I mean, they never,
for instance,
they did, but in the history in the back. But in the recent history, since, the Assembly of UN and then all these peace, the International Court of Justice, all these peace maintaining organizations throughout the world, the Russians have been generally, officially, their position was, we are a peaceful nation, we want peace around the world. Even when they invaded other countries, they still had an official position of peace. But now they no longer do that. Why? Well, because you keep poking the bear is going to wake up. And I'm not saying they're right or wrong. And I'm not saying that they're right or they're wrong. I'm not saying even if they have the moral justification to do that. I'm just saying, if you don't want people to celebrate their warrior side, try to see how you can avoid antagonizing them, right? If you have a bully in the class, is it going to work for you to expel that bully and let him out of school and without education? And if you have a bully in the class,
yeah,
the interest is to integrate them, to make sure that, you're bigger, you're stronger, and you may have a tendency of smacking people around. But how about see if you can live without, see if you can just be a nice person. And
that runs into its own because the example you're proposing is kind of a Turkey situation. Well, Turkey is a member of the non-bully. They're integrated into the NATO. They want to be a member of the EU, but that's not ever going to happen.
Yeah. But they were part of NATO, yeah.
They're part of NATO, but they're still bullies.
They are.
They're still bullies.
They're not,
but they
as
use the
as
camouflage. But they use the camouflage of being on the right side of history, whatever that means. And they use that to antagonize the Armenians, the Kurds, all of their neighbors. They use it to militarily intervene on the side of juntas in Libya. So I would say that the problem is it can't be... Just like in a society, you can't let people do whatever they want. You should let people be as free as possible, but you can't. If someone goes up to someone else and starts fucking wailing on them, that's assault and battery. That's a charge, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to.
There needs to be.
You have to have the means to correct behavior,
Yeah.
But, you know,
So when a society claims to starts and maybe you're right. Maybe it's impossible to maybe it's not impossible. Maybe it's too hard and to establish a criteria by which the rest of the world can agree a country is revanchist.
yeah, but the truth is this. We were talking last time, and I believe that in the end, what needs to happen is you need to educate everybody. Because once you educate everybody and you tell everybody, you open the books and you tell them the truth, there's going to be some resentment, but in the end, wounds are going to heal. Whenever you let the sun on a wound, the wound is going to heal. You just need to let light hit it. Whenever you keep things in dark, wounds tend to pus and burst.
I agree
Yeah.
90. So I want to push back on that a little because I think this is I think a thing a lot of people say. If you educate the masses, things will work out in the best for everyone because that's a stable long-term solution. And I agree. I agree 95%. I think the problem is you are assuming that every human being is rational. And every human being is not rational.
Yeah, but you don't need every human being to be rational. You just need to hit a critical mass of rational people, which is actually really possible. Yes, it is. The human society, by the way natural selection works. Whenever you have warrior nations by definition, they turn to flame out. You know the famous saying, the brightest flame goes quickest.
Yeah.
Right? So warrior nations just flame out. Nobody remembers Genghis Khan. The statues they build in Mongolia for him are not even probably accurate representation of the guy.
How long did the Great Mongol Horde even last? 50 years?
I don't know.
Less than a century.
Yeah. They've done massive damage to everybody because they were just... I don't think they were educated. The masses in that...
The Soviet Union lasted 70 years.
Right. And
the German Reich lasted
9. And by the way, the Soviet Union also was not even defeated. It just imploded.
Yes.
It wasn't even like famously the secret services in the West didn't even foresee that. They didn't even project that, the Soviet Union's going to fall. They just fell. They just dropped one day.
Part of that it
was done.
Part of that you can say was Gorbachev and Yeltsin's fault, but that's a different...
I don't know if it was fault or whatever, but the reality was that it fell. It imploded. So it's not... The warrior nations don't, going back to the bully in the class, if the bully starts acting out, and the class is also a class where everybody has a knife in their shoe and the gun, and the class is actually not even there to study, but they sell drugs and prostitute themselves one to another or whatever.
Yeah.
That's obviously a gunpowder barrel waiting to blow up. But if everybody in the class, or not everybody, but let's say 80%, 85% of the class is there to go to Harvard, or I don't want to say Harvard actually. I want to say is there to go to college, go to better
is there to
themselves,
become
right,
educated.
to become educated.
Whatever that may
Some of
mean
them
for
wanna
you.
right. Some of them want
Do
to
the best they can.
Yeah. Some of them are dreaming to become president of the United States.
Yeah.
Some of them, then the bully can act out all they want. There's just not going to be vibe to feed off of. So they'll realize that they're ridiculous.
If they're a bad bully, yes. If they're
I don't know.
if they're a Patrick Bateman style bully, they'll become integrated into that.
The
flock
instincts
of
of a bully are not. They're pretty natural instincts, actually. So a bully is still going to have a secret crush on one of the girls in the class. And if they're going to be acting out like a clown, that girl's not going to look at them. But if they're going to be like, hey, you know what, I want to join the choir. And it turns out they're a bully, but they have a great voice. That they might actually get a shot with that girl, Just an example. So even in this case, you have a bully like Russia, and they say they're a warrior people. But if you figure out ways to get a common ground with them,
and we should point out that's not necessarily indicative of every Russian person. I would actually, that guy is speaking for a very big population,
and. So again, Russian culture gave us Dostoevsky,
Tolstoy, a very anti-war author.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily a given that if they made the statement, it means that they're gonna conquer the world. They made a statement, the Russian people are a warrior people, probably because they felt threatened in some way. And so they said, well, if war language is what the rest of the world understands, we're going to talk some war language. But it's not entirely, because you have the Prime Minister of Estonia, if I believe correctly. Mm-hmm. She made some worrisome statements in which they talked about Russia has to be defeated. Understandably, she might have ancestors or people in the family that have suffered during the USSR
suffered
time.
Under the USSR, right, and then under the Tsar, and then.
But that's a cycle that has to be broken. At some point, somebody's going to have to start talking about peace.
Well,
if everybody's talking about war and war and war, then really Estonia is going to defeat Russia? Oh no, Estonia and the rest of Europe. Well, hold on. Romania didn't sign up to defend Estonia. When is the Prime Minister of Estonia now the Prime Minister of Romania as well? That's an encroachment on other sovereignties, right? Understand, we're part of the European Union, but wait, hold on.
The
Who
attitude is, so the idea is Russia's invaded us 3 times in the last 120 years. They are invading our neighbors. They're and the pretext of the special military mission to denazify Ukraine, I think that pretense has been dropped. It's been pretty clear that pretense has been dropped. And not just Ukraine, Georgia too, Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan didn't have a military intervention, but it did have one could argue, a Russian-backed coup. And I think a lot of people, especially in the Baltics and in Poland, are feeling threatened. And I think the onus of responsibility is now on the Russian Federation to ease those people's concerns and say, hey, look, you guys don't need to preemptively strike at us. We are a peace-loving nation. we will leave you guys alone.
Yeah, and it sounds like, is it today or tomorrow they're going to meet in Turkey again? The trilateral meeting, and hopefully they come out of there with a peace plan.
Yeah.
Hopefully this whole nightmare ends, because in the end, there's people that are dying, and humans are used as cannon fodder, and it's not a good thing. All right, so but in the end, we were like, for this segment, I was saying, to wrap it up, is we can absolutely talk about humanity spending less effort in making weapons and making ammunition, but it's an effort that has to happen on a global scale,
bilaterally across all
trilaterally,
nations.
whatever, multilaterally. Like, everybody has to kind of be in sync in the same way. In whatever business model they have set up, you can't just say, well, I'm going to cut, whatever, $1 billion, because $1 billion in the military-industrial complex in U.S. is different than $1 billion in the military-industrial complex in Russia, or the military-industrial complex in China, or the military-industrial complex in India. Every country has a military-industrial complex. It's either big or small. Some of them are just customers. France has the Dassault Aviation, a big
Rheinmetall in Germany.
Right.
In Germany.
Yeah. So everybody has to get into the same to be in, what the cliche expression, to be in lockstep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Some current events today. Well, so today's what draws your attention in today's current events? What do you think is worth mentioning?